everybody? Welcome to the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I am your host, Andrew. We got a quick episode this week. What I mainly want to do here is just bring you up to speed on the playoff picture for the Angle Dynasty League. This is our home Dynasty League, 30-team real salary league, and we are currently in the semifinals. So the Final Four has been decided, and we're going to see this week who moves on to the championship game. So last time we updated you on the league, it was at just the beginning of playoffs. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at what happened in round one, and then I will lead us off all the way up to the Final Four. Before we get into that, if you haven't seen it already, we have released a new Dynasty Rank update specific to points leagues that is available on our Patreon, patreon.com/Angle Fantasy Basketball. All of our free content you can find on anglefantasybasketball.com. Okay, so we got the league already pulled up here on Fantrax. Now, into round one, our number one seed versus the 16 seed was Mexico City versus Dubai. It was a close matchup. Dubai really had the ability to punch above his weight class, and that was mainly thanks to Kawhi Leonard, who, if you haven't seen from the, especially from late February through the beginning of March, Kawhi has been going quite bonkers for the Clippers, and they've just been a completely different team from what they've been in the beginning. In addition to that, he has Denny Avdia on the squad, but Mexico City was the number one seed for a reason. So he was able to pull out that victory. Dubai did make it close, so shout out to HBB. This was his first year in the league. Credit to him for making playoffs and giving the number one seed a run for his money. So Mexico City moved on. This is a matchup I thought was going to be a lot closer, but after we talked about it, Mitchell was right. The Chicago Bulls had way too many injuries to put up a competitive run here, and Vélez Sarsfield walked away with that win pretty comfortably, 6-3. Now on to the Las Vegas Aces versus the Beijing Ducks. Beijing was who we put at number one overall in our power rankings for the playoff update. He cruised to a comfortable win against Las Vegas, 7-2, despite Vegas having a pretty strong schedule that week with the 4-game week from the Houston Rockets. Case is a Rockets fan, so his team is pretty heavy on the Rockets players. Beijing does have Jokic, so wasn't able to outweigh that one. Now, to the spicy matchup of round one here. Within the Angle Dynasty server, like within our Discord server specific for the league, I posted for the league mates only, they were the only ones that saw this, my favorite first three matchups of the round. First one was Blackwater Bossing versus Boston, after Boston discussed it with us following a not too happy review of the first Power Rank edition we did for the playoff picture. He made us very well aware of how good of a schedule he had. So that was one to note. The other one was a close matchup. I believe that was between Syracuse and Brisbane. That was the two very evenly matched teams, both healthy rosters. And then comes Hobart versus our own Braxton's Charlotte Sting. So Charlotte was a top 5 seed. The reason why I was interested in this one is Hobart has a punt, like a very strong punt build. And I thought that was going to interfere with what Braxton usually tries to do. Braxton's a very volume-heavy team. He's based around Luka and LeBron, a lot of guys who put up counting stats across the board. And I wondered if he was going to have a hard time, if he was not going to win rebounds, steals, and probably even blocks as well. Hobart locked all those down. And with, being that Braxton had Luka and LeBron, Hobart, in his big man punt build, is really good at field goal percentage. So Braxton obviously needs field goal percentage because having Luka in them, he's probably going to struggle from the free throw line. So that was what interested me the most about that matchup, is that Hobart in his super punt is good in some categories that Braxton really needs. And it ended up being enough. He was able to pull off easily the biggest upset of the entire playoffs by taking out a top 5 seed as one of the lower seeds. So congrats to Ben, Hobart Chargers. That is a huge win for you. On now to our third Angle team in here, which is the Sam McGill Bierman, Mitchell's team. He beat Sports Lisboa Benfica. Benfica was a lot stronger last year, a little bit weaker this year, and I hope to see him, back up towards the top again. This was a relatively easy victory for Mitchell's squad here. Nothing too noteworthy there. But then that brings us to these two matchups here that I really wanted to keep a close eye on at the beginning of round one. Brisbane versus Syracuse. These were both of those teams were my dark horse to win the entire thing. despite being double-digit seeds for the two of them, or I think they were close to double digits, definitely not in like the top 6, but both healthy, both had really good teams that were probably a bit stronger than what their season-ending rank ended up being. And Brisbane, with the help of Jamal Murray, Jalen Johnson, a few others, pulled out a pretty comfortable victory over Syracuse there. And then, actually, I did say Hobart over Braxton team was a huge upset, and it is. But the biggest upset of them all, I would now have to say, is probably Boston over Blackwater. Now, I would say that Braxton's team was in better form right now, which is why I think, that upset from Hobart over him was equally as impressive, or perhaps even more impressive, depending on who you ask. But Boston was the number 15 seed, or either 14 seed, actually, and I think Boston was the 3rd seed. However, Blackwater, he lost Shaedon Sharpe right after trading for him. He lost Vince Williams. Steph Curry has been on the shelf for quite a long amount of time now. And Boston had a really good schedule that week. He had multiple games with Cooper Flagg. Pretty stacked. It stacked up well for him. It's something that he pointed out to us at the right after our podcast covering the first round happened. And he was definitely right. He proved us wrong. Mitch gave him less than 5% chance of winning. And if it was less than 5%, well, then he ended up pulling off the statistical miracle. But we think it was a bit stronger than that. Obviously, injuries to Blackwater helped, but credit to Boston. His team did pull off the win. He did have a good schedule, good enough to beat Blackwater, and it was spearheaded by his number 1 pick, Cooper Flagg. So you love to see something along those lines happen in a Dynasty League. And then lastly comes yours truly. I had a matchup with the PSV Red Lions. Now, I will say, shout out to the Red Lions. Mad respect to his team. I could have easily lost just like Braxton did, because just like that same scenario happened to me as well, where PSV is as good as me as some of my strongest categories. He ended up winning 3-pointers, points, and free throw percentage, all 3 categories I really, really need to win. And shout out to Ryan Kalkbrenner getting 7 out of my 18 blocks for the week by himself, because I needed to win categories that I was not good at in order to pull off this matchup. He has those free throw merchants like Devin Booker and Brandon Ingram to match my Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and James Harden. In addition to that, Shai missed a game that week. Actually, I only had 2 games from Shai and 2 games from Harden. So that's tough enough in itself. But the rest of the supporting crew got it done. Mad respect to both Jalen Suggs and Ryan Kalkbrenner, because winning both defensive categories was probably the main reason of how I was able to move on, especially after losing free throw percentage, which is very rare for me. So locking those 2 downs, and then I comfortably won assists. That's really the only reason I was able to move on, was especially on the defensive side. So even though I'm a punch block team, I picked up Ryan Kalkbrenner partway through the season saying, hey, I do need to maybe diversify a little bit. I might come across a team that has a similar stat set to mine, and I might need blocks. And look at that. That scenario did happen, and I was able to move on. Now, going into round 2 here, if you made it past the first round in this league and on to round 2, you have now automatically won your buy-in money back at the minimum. So whoever's on to round 2, they've broken even for their league entry fees for this season. So the first matchup to discuss here for round 2 was Vélez Sarsfield versus Mexico City. Mexico City, again, number 1 seed for a reason. He was able to pull out a very comfortable victory here. I believe it was just mostly a strength and schedule thing. I mean, he's such a deep team, Mexico City. Like really his best player is Evan Mobley, whereas there's teams like, Mitchell's team that has Victor Wembanyama, or Beijing has Nikola Jokic, with those really top-tier superstars. But Mexico City just kills you with depth. It is definitely a strength and numbers approach for his team. So he was able to pull one out. Shout out to Adrian getting his league fees back at least. So free entry for him for next year for his Vélez Sarsfield team. Hobart's Cinderella run stopped in round 2. He met the juggernaut that is the Beijing Ducks. Again, this is the team with Jokic. And despite, Hobart also being good at some of the categories Beijing is good at, he was just that much better, especially if you have somebody along the lines of Jokic helping out. I think Giannis might have been limited in his availability for Hobart in week 2 as well. So pretty comfortable win there for Beijing. Round 2 was a bit more spread apart than the first round was, that's for sure. First round had a lot of close ones. Now, Mitchell's team, San Miguel, had to move on to play Brisbane, and I know this one was actually a pretty close matchup. up until Sunday, I believe. But San Miguel, Mitchell's team, was able to pull that one out 6-3. Shout out to Brisbane, obviously one of the most active people in the league, makes a ton of trades each year. He got pretty close to pulling out a good result for himself. And of course, he did make his league buy-in fees back for himself as well. So free entry for next year for Brisbane. And then the other Cinderella story ended in round 2 as well. I had to take on Boston after he so kindly did me the favor of knocking out Blackwater Bossing. And it was pretty big landslide throughout the week, but it was a strength of schedule, and Boston had some players hurt, so I was able to take a pretty comfortable victory there. So now that moves us on to our final 4, round 3, which is the current week we are in. I am filming this on Monday the 16th, so games have already started for at least the first day of the week. So you will see some scores on here of the matchup, but keep note that it is Monday, so obviously these scores could change. But moving on to this first matchup, let me minimize this so we can get the other guy. Whoops, the other guy on the screen here. Mexico City, our number 1 seed, is playing Beijing this week. So this is one half of the final 4. So number 1 seed versus the number 1 in our power rankings, which is obviously a very interesting matchup to see. So let's see if the Jokic-led team can overcome the strengths and numbers approach that Mexico City has. Mexico City has also picked up a lot of those silly season guys like Jameer Watkins. He has Jemai Mushak as well. Guys like that who help around the edges. And, Beijing is obviously a good team as well. I think he has maybe an injury or two, maybe like Luke Cornett. Nothing too major, but he does have Jokic, of course. And as far as Mexico City is concerned, I know Cleveland for Mobley's schedule is pretty decent this week. So that should be a pretty even matchup between them two. But the other half of this, unfortunately, might not be that even. And that's myself against Mitchell. So it's bad enough already that I've already had to face Mitchell twice in 2 different dynasty leagues and lost to him both times. It's one thing playing your friends in playoffs. It's another thing playing your best friend in playoffs, because we have a running bet each year of, whoever wins the series for that year, one has to buy the other a gift. So now I owe Mitch probably a pretty nice tea time green fee for our next round of golf. And for this week, I want to believe in my team as much as possible, but he has 5 games worth of the March version of Jalen Green going for him this week and 4 games of Victor Wembanyama. In addition to that, I only have 3 games each of Harden and Shea, and Shea's OKC has a back-to-back where the second half of that back-to-back is against Brooklyn. So we're talking really, really high risk of Shea only playing twice this week. Right now, Mitchell has 6 more guys than he's scheduled this week. So this is a time where I miss being in that games cap league, like an industry pickup, which we did last year. The playoffs is probably the only time I missed that. It was a ton of work to manage the game cap system throughout the season, to be fair. It was fun, but a lot of work, which is probably why we didn't do it again this year. But in this type of playoff scenario, this is where I really wish we did have it, because it would even out a bit. He has an entire day's worth more of starters than me, even though it says he only has 4 more. 2 of those starts for me is Bronny James, which is basically nothing. So full day's worth of 6 starter advantage. Not looking too good, but I'm going to not give up complete hope yet. You never know. Wemby might get hurt. Something crazy might happen. Shea might drop 70 points in a game. Who knows? Harden might drop 70 points in a game. With the free throws being a big anchor for getting you some points, obviously we can pretty much count on Shea and Harden to be good for an explosion like that. Maybe this week. Send good vibes for a Shea or Harden explosion for me this week, or else my run will probably stop here in the Final 4. I was in the championship game last year. I was unfortunately the runner-up. I would love to get back there again this year, but going the championship game the first year and Final 4 the second year, not too shabby, I suppose, but not giving up yet. Let's see how this one works out. So that's your Final 4. Mexico City, Beijing, Real Madrid, and San Miguel. All 4 of those teams are part of the top 6. So even though there was some upsets and quite a bit of parity through the first round, it did end up being those stronger seeds that have made it into the Final 4 here. So that's going to do it for us today. We will give you an update on who the champion is after a couple weeks from now once we see that. If you like this league, then make sure to join our Discord server. You can get in the waiting list to join. Leave a comment down below. Let us know how you are doing in your leagues, what you think about this league. Like this video. Subscribe if you are new. It would be much appreciated. And we will see you all next time.